Love is not scary in the beginning. In the beginning, love feels light. It's beautiful, open, natural. You want to talk, you want to share, you want to be close. There is excitement, there is hope, there is softness. And then slowly, something changes. You start thinking more, you start checking more, you start needing more reassurance. You start noticing every change in tone, energy, or attention. What happened? Did love change? Or the fear entered? Love itself does not become fear. Fear enters love when love gets mixed with attachment. When the person becomes linked to your safety, your worth, your future, your identity, then love stops feeling free and it starts feeling dangerous. Love is such a beautiful feeling and it is all about freedom. But with attachment, it starts becoming a prison. That's when overthinking starts. That's when insecurity starts. That's when the self erasure starts. That's when even a good relationship can start feeling heavy. People don't realize it. They think that fear means the love is deep. The fear does not mean the love is deep. It means the attachment is deep. And that is what we are going to discuss today. I don't want to make you scared of love, but to help you see what enters love and contaminates it, what eats love from within. Because once you can see that clearly, you stop fighting love and you start understanding fear. Welcome to the Detachment Circle, where we dive deeper into mindfulness, detachment, and spiritual wisdom to help you live with clarity and peace. My name is Siddharth Das, your guide in this journey to self realization. And today's episode is Why Love Turns into Fear. We are going deep into what love really is and what fear really is. We'll separate them both. How attachment quietly enters relationships and contaminate it. Why you start losing yourself once you begin to care deeply. Why overthinking, anxiety, and fear of abandonment show up in a relationship. And of course, what Vedanta says about love, attachment, and completeness. This is not an episode about blaming your partner, and it is not an episode about becoming detached in a cold way. This is about understanding why something that begins so beautifully can slowly turn into tension, insecurity, and suffering. If you have ever said, why am I overthinking so much? Why do I fear losing them? Why do I become anxious when I care? Or why does love feel peaceful at first and then stressful later? This episode is for you. Let's take a breath. We are diving deep into the root. Let's begin by separating two things that people mix up all the time: love and fear. Because once they get mixed up, the whole relationship becomes very confusing. Now, let's start with love. What can I say about love? Love is beautiful, it's freedom. Love is simple, not always easy, not always convenient, but simple. Love is open, it allows, it listens. It does not need to hold tightly, it does not need to panic. And of course, it does not need to constantly ask, are we okay? Are we okay? Are we okay? Love is presence. Love is an ocean. And people try to fit this ocean into a small box, in a small stream. Love is your whole being. Love is your godliness. You are love. When the love is there, you feel more of yourself, not less. You feel open enough to share, safe enough to be honest, soft enough to receive, strong enough to let the other person be who they are. Love does not try to control the future. That is fear. That's the difference. Love is your natural being, it is your natural state. If you remove everything, your name, your behavior, your body, if you remove everything, all that is left is love. But often it gets confused with fear. Fear is not open, of course. Fear contracts. Fear tightens the body. Fear starts scanning for danger. Fear is always on alert mode. Fear turns silence into a threat. Fear turns distance into rejection. Fear turns uncertainty into a story. Love meets, fear manages. The love says, I'm here with you. And the fear says, how do I make sure that this does not go wrong? Sounds familiar? This is where people get trapped. Because fear can look like care. You think you are being loving, but you're actually performing. You're actually monitoring. You think you are deeply invested, but actually you are just becoming hyper vigilant, more alert. You think you are protecting the relationship, but actually you are protecting yourself from the loss. That is not the same. There is a difference. Let me say this directly, and it might hurt a little. Sometimes what you call love is just fear dressed up as devotion. It may look like, oh, I care so much, but underneath it is, I am scared to lose this. It may look like, I'm just sensitive, but underneath it is, I'm constantly scanning for signs that I am not safe. It may also look like, I just want reassurance, but underneath it is, I don't trust that I can survive emotional uncertainty. If that seems familiar, that's okay. You're not broken, you're just human. But if you do not see it clearly, you will start blaming love for what fear is doing. And that is unfair to love. Love did not make you anxious. Love did not make you obsessive. Love did not make you abandon yourself. That was fear. And fear usually enters when love becomes something else, when love gets attached to something else, to your worth, to your security, to your identity, to your future, to your sense of being enough. And that's why this conversation we are having today matters. Because if you don't separate love and fear, you will never know what is actually happening inside you. You will keep saying, love hurts. No, love is not what hurts. Attachment hurts. Insecurity hurts. Projection hurts. Dependence hurts. Love in its pure form does not hurt. Losses hurt. Clinging hurts. The mind's resistance to reality hurts. But the love itself, love is one of the cleanest, purest things we can experience. And that's why some people are right when they say, I don't think love turns into fear. I think trauma turns into fear. There is truth in that. Love opens the door. But if the trauma is sitting inside, trauma enters the room too. If old abandonment is sitting inside, it enters too. If insecurity is sitting inside, it will enter as well. So, love becomes the space where everything that is hidden, that is suppressed, starts coming up. And because it came up in love, we assume love has caused it. Not always. Sometimes love simply reveals what is already there. That's why the beginning of healing is not to say love is dangerous. The beginning of healing would be something in me becomes afraid when love gets real. And I talk to people all the time who are undergoing this. If you see, there is a contrast in both the sentences. One creates cynicism, and the other creates awareness. And awareness is where the freedom begins. Before we move on to the next segment, I want you to pause here and ask yourself something very honestly. When you say you're scared in love, what are you actually scared of? Being left alone? Being unseen? Being cheated on? Not being enough? Losing control? Losing yourself? Sit with it. Maybe write about it. Because fear, when it is seen, becomes manageable, but only when it is seen clearly. Let's move on. Now, love does not usually begins with fear. It begins pretty healthy with openness. There is freshness, there is curiosity, a possibility. You're not overthinking every word, you're not analyzing every delay, you're not collapsing because they took time to reply. Why do you think so? Because in the beginning, the ego has not fully attached yet. You are enjoying the connection, but you are not yet built into it. You're not attached yet. Then slowly, something starts happening. The person stops being just a person. They start becoming a source of your comfort, a source of your validation, a source of your emotional safety, a source of identity, a source of future, a source of relief. And that is the turning point. Because the moment someone becomes linked to your inner stability, the fear will enter. Because now it is no longer just, I love being with you. Now it becomes, what if I lose this? What if they change? What if I'm not enough? What if this ends? What if I care more than they do? What will happen? That is when love starts getting contaminated. And this has nothing to do with your love. Your love was not weak. But now the attachment has entered the space. The attachment is growing now. The attachment will say, I need this to remain the same. But life does not promise that, right? People change, energy change, attention fluctuates, moods change, life becomes demanding. So the mind becomes very watchful. At first, you were in the moment, and now you are in the future. At first, you were relating, now you are protecting. At first, you were feeling, now you are managing. This is how love turns into fear. And it does not happen suddenly, it happens slowly, quietly, one thought at a time, one dependence at a time, one small insecurity at a time. And the dangerous part is because it happens so slowly, people don't even notice the change. They just wake up one day feeling anxious in a relationship that once felt beautiful. That is why someone from my community said something so accurate. At first, it starts feeling so good, but when the moment it starts getting serious, I'm scared of attachment and I have a fear that it will end anyway. Exactly. Someone sent me this question. It happens because seriousness often means ego has entered. The future has entered. Expectations has entered. Imagination has entered. Now you are no longer just loving the person. You are loving the idea of where this will go, the security it gives you, the identity it offers you, the emotional meaning it creates. Now there is more to lose. That is why fear grows as attachment. The more you attach, the more this fear will grow. And this does not mean that intimacy or closeness is wrong, but closeness without inner stability becomes dependence. The problem is not that you care deeply. The problem is when caring get mixed up with needing. Need is what makes love feels dangerous. And we talked about this need in the previous episode about desire. It never ends. Because if I need you for my emotional balance, then every small change in you will become a threat to me. If I need you to feel worthy, then your withdrawal will feel like a rejection to my whole self. If I need you to feel secure, then uncertainty becomes unbearable. And this is why fear makes the relationship heavier with time. You stop meeting the person as they are. You start meeting them through your anxiety, through your stories, through your thoughts. And anxiety does what anxiety always does, it predicts, it scans, it prepares, it assumes. And soon you are not in love, you are in defense. This is also why so many people will say everything was fine, but I don't know when I started becoming like this. Because fear is not always loud in the beginning. It enters quietly through attachment, and attachment enters quietly through identification. You begin to identify with my relationship, my person, my boyfriend or girlfriend, my future, my security, my worth. The moment something becomes mine, the fear of loss begins. Mine is such a ego thing to say. This is why Vedanta is so sharp about rag. Remember our episode about rag, the attachment? Rag is not just liking something, it is psychological attachment. It is when peace becomes conditional, and conditional peace is a fragile peace. You can love someone deeply and still remain free within. But the moment your peace depends on them, love starts carrying fear. And then even a good relationship can feel unsafe because your mind has made it the guardian of your well being. And that is too much weight for any human to carry. And I want you to reflect on this. Pause and ask yourself honestly, when did this relationship stop being a connection and start becoming a source of your emotional safety? When did I begin to fear losing it? Was it because something actually happened, or because my mind started building a future around it? Sit with it, journal about it, meditate on it. Just notice. No fixing, just observation. Let's go a little deeper now. Because fear in love is not just emotional. Very often it feels physical. You feel it in your chest, it gets tight, restless thoughts, loss of appetite, obsessive checking, imagining worst case scenarios, and sudden drop in mood because they sounded a little different on the call. Why does love starts feeling like survival? Because for many people, it is no longer just about love. It has become about safety, identity, self worth, belonging, and emotional regulation. And when all of these things gets tied to one person, the nervous system starts treating it like oxygen. So this relationship feels like survival because this is a source of oxygen. That is why small changes feels so huge. It is not always because the change is huge, but your system has attached too much meaning to it. A delayed reply, for example, is not just delayed reply. It becomes, am I losing them? Did I do something? Are they leaving me? Am I being replaced? Was I stupid to trust them? This is where love stops being a relationship and it starts being a survival loop. And this is exactly what one of your questions pointed towards. Mhm. Is it true that we operate out of survival? We want to have somebody by our side so much that we end up putting someone else on pedestal, and that's why the fear. The answer to that question is yes. That's exactly what happens. When your inner world does not feel rooted, you start using another person as your emotional ground. And then naturally, you put them on a pedestal because now they are not just someone you love. They are someone who make you feel calm or chosen, or less alone, more valuable, more certain about yourself. And once someone starts carrying that much psychological importance, fear is very natural. It is unavoidable because now losing them feels like losing love, losing identity, losing hope, or worth, or safety, or future, and whatnot. That is too much power to give a human being, too much responsibility, too much dependence. That is why this putting them on a pedestal is kind of dangerous because you don't just admire them now, you emotionally elevate them above you. And once that happens, you become smaller in that relationship. Your clarity will go away, your boundaries will get weak, your perception becomes biased. Now you are not seeing them clearly, you are seeing them through need. This is why people say, I know they are not right for me, but I can't let go. I hear this almost on a daily basis because the issue is not logic, the issue is survival. A part of you believes that if I lose this person, something inside me will die. That belief is the real problem. What would Vedanta say here? This is what happens when ego forgets its source. Ego feels separate, limited, incomplete. So it runs towards external objects, people, approval, roles, achievement to feel more solid. And the relationships become one of the most powerful places where this happens. Because human closeness gives temporary relief. When someone desires you, you feel expanded. When someone stays with you, you feel safer. When someone chooses you, you feel more real. And because those feelings are so strong, the ego starts building a structure around them. I need this. I can't lose this. This person means too much. What would I do without them? This is where fear enters fully. Not because of love, not because love is dangerous, because your sense of self has become entangled with the relationship. And this entanglement will always create anxiety. This is why spiritual and psychological meet so beautifully here. Psychology will say these are old wounds, attachment patterns, abandonment fears, nervous system memory, and spirituality. Vedanta will say ignorance, identification, rag, dependence on the external for inner peace. Different language, same truth. So you can either go with science or spirituality, they both are saying the same thing. You are not just reacting to the person in front of you, you are reacting to everything they have come to represent inside you. That is why sometimes the fear feels bigger than the situation itself, because it is. The fear is not just about this moment. It is carrying old wounds, old meanings, old emptiness. And if you do not see that, you will keep trying to fix the relationship instead of understanding the inner structure that turns love into fear. The person is not always the problem. The amount of identity you have invested in them is. That is hard to hear, but it is liberating. Because once you see that clearly, you will stop asking, how do I make them behave in a way that soothes me, that gives me relief? And you will start asking better question. Why has my stability become so dependent on them? That question changes everything. And while you are asking that, I want you to also ask yourself very honestly that what does this relationship represent for you beyond the person? Is it love? Is it safety? Is it worth or belonging? A future, relief from loneliness, or proof that you matter? Write the first answer that comes up. That is important. One of the most painful thing in fear in relationship is that it does not always come like panic. Sometimes it comes like adjustment, small adjustment, subtle compromises, tiny self betrayals that look harmless in the beginning. You stop saying what you really feel. You become more careful, more agreeable, more pleasing, more available, more adaptive. And slowly, without even realizing it, you are no longer showing up as yourself. You are showing up as the version of you that feels easier to keep. This is how people lose themselves in love. And I see this almost on a daily basis. Not in one dramatic moment, but in many quiet moments where fear will whisper in their head that don't say that, don't ask for too much, don't ruin the connection, don't be difficult, be understanding, stay calm, be nice, don't make them go away. Sounds familiar? And all of this can look very mature from the outside, but inside you are shrinking. Your truth becomes smaller. Your needs becomes negotiable. Your instincts becomes quieter and your identity starts bending around the relationship. That is not love, that is fear managing this intimacy. And this is why love starts feeling heavy. Because now you are not just trying to hold the relationship, you are trying to hold a version of you together inside it. And one of the questions you sent in the community was that you are losing yourself slowly. Exactly. That is what many people feel but cannot name. They don't feel overly controlled. They don't even always blame the other person, but they notice that something inside is no longer free. They are more anxious, more self conscious, more hesitant, more dependent on how the other person is feeling. Their inner center is shifted outside. And once that happens, fear is constant. Because if your center is outside you, then your peace is always vulnerable. And one of your questions in the community, you asked how to balance being yourself, how to be present and being with the person. For me, it is all about losing myself or just doing my thing. And that was such an important question because many people think they only have two options. Either I fully merge and lose myself, or I fully withdraw and protect myself. But those are not the only two options. That's what fear tells you. Love without awareness creates confusion. Fear without awareness creates avoidance. But intimacy asks for something else. It asks for presence without self abandonment. That's love. That means that I can be with you without leaving myself. I can care deeply without making your mood my identity. I can love you without silencing my truth to keep your approval. That is love. And this is where another question fits beautifully. How do I balance giving a lot of love in a relationship without coming across as needy or losing my own identity? Beautiful question. The answer is not to love less, right? The answer is to stop using love as a strategy to secure that connection. When love is free, it gives. When love is afraid, it overgives. Overgiving is not generosity. Overgiving is fear. Overgiving says, if I give enough, maybe they will stay. If I understand enough, maybe they will choose me. If I am patient enough, maybe they will finally love me the way I need. That is not love. That is your fear bargaining. And bargaining always costs you something. In this case, your voice, your boundaries, your self respect, your ability to see clearly. That's why losing yourself in love is so dangerous. Because once you leave yourself, you start calling self betrayal commitment. You start calling emotional suppression maturity. You start calling neediness depth. And the whole relationship becomes built on distortion. Vedanta will say the more you forget your own center, the more you depend on the external world. And the more you depend on the external, the more the fear will enter. Because now you are not just afraid of losing them, you are afraid of losing the version of yourself that has become built around them. Sometimes what you are protecting is not the relationship, it is the identity you created inside that relationship. That is why letting go feels so painful. Not always because they were your whole world, but because you made them the place where your identity lived. And if identity is living there, of course the fear will guard it. Now, the work is not about how do I stop overthinking? How do I stop being needy? How do I stop caring much? The work for you is how do I return to myself while loving someone? Because once you return to yourself, love becomes cleaner. You stop giving from fear. You stop staying from fear. You stop silencing yourself from fear. And love becomes what it was meant to be: presence, a meeting, not a disappearance. A lot of people have not actually experienced love. They have experienced fear inside closeness, need inside affection, anxiety inside attachment, hope inside uncertainty. And because those states are intense, they assume they must be love. But intensity is not proof. Karmic relationships are so intense. Sometimes intensity is simply inner chaos meeting another person. So, what does real love actually look like? Let's be honest here. Real love is not dramatic. That may disappoint the ego, but it will calm the nervous system. Real love does not need constant proof of itself. It does not need endless checking, testing, guessing, decoding. Real love is not dead, it is just not chaotic. There is warmth, there is care, there is desire, there is closeness, and underneath all of that, there is steadiness. And that steadiness matters, that stillness. Because if the relationship constantly destabilizes you, something other than love is running the show. Very simple. Real love does not make you abandon yourself. You do not have to shrink to keep it. You do not have to overfunction to maintain it. You do not have to live in performance mode to deserve it. You can bring your truth into it. You can say what you feel. You can ask for clarity. You can hold boundaries. You can make mistakes without feeling like the whole relationship or connection will be lost. That is a very different quality of experience. Real love gives space. Space. Not avoidance, not distance, space. Space for both people to remain whole. Space for truth, for breathing, for moods, for humanity. Fear hates space. Fear thinks space means danger. Fear thinks distance means loss. Fear thinks silence means rejection. But real love does not get threatened by every pause. That is why real love feels calmer than people expect. Real love is not the one that makes you feel the most. It is the one that disturbs you the least. Remember that. That doesn't mean that it is flat, it is just safe. And safety is not boring. Safety is what allows love to deepen. Without safety, the relationship may be exciting, but it cannot become truly intimate because intimacy requires nervous system's permission. It requires enough inner safety for people to reveal themselves without defending, without being afraid. And another important thing, real love is not ownership. The moment love becomes mine, fear begins to guard it. My partner, my security, my future, my place, my emotions. Now the love carries pressure. But when love is free from possession, it becomes lighter. Lighter. Not weak, lighter. You can love someone deeply without gripping them psychologically. You can want them without making them the source of your worth. You can care without collapsing when they are imperfect. That is mature love. And this is where spirituality becomes so relevant. Because Vedanta does not ask you to become cold, it asks you to stop seeking yourself in another person. Once that shift happens, love becomes sharing, not compensation. You stop asking, will this person complete me? And you start asking, can I meet this person from wholeness? How beautiful that question is. It changes how you choose, how you stay, how you live, how you communicate, how you receive. Real love is not about being rescued, it is about being met. And when you are met, you do not feel more confused. You feel more honest. You do not feel more addicted. You feel more present. You do not feel more fragmented. You feel more yourself. That is the sign. Not butterflies, not constant obsession, not the inability to eat, sleep, or focus. Those things still happen in attraction. They are not the proof of love. Love becomes real when your body is not always preparing for pain. Love becomes real when your nervous system is not constantly on alert. Love becomes real when your heart opens without your identity getting collapsed or swallowed. That is why detachment matters. Because detachment protects love from fear. Detachment allows love to stay love. Without detachment, love can quickly get mixed with need or control, insecurity, projection, emotional dependence, and whatnot. And then we blame love for what attachment has done. Real love does not make you smaller, it does not make you doubt your worth, it does not make you chase what is unwilling, it does not ask you to betray your peace. Real love can challenge you, it can mirror you, it can stretch you, expand you, but it does not dismantle your dignity. If it does, something else is operating there, not love. And we must name it, we must observe it honestly. Let's move on to your questions. I'm going to take some of your questions. I tried to incorporate some of your questions already in the episodes, and these questions are the places where love starts becoming heavy or confusing and you start to suffer. And if you hear your own question in someone else's words, good. That means you are not alone in this. The first question: I am anxious partner. So even if there is a little bit of difference, I can feel it, and I'm worried a lot that they might leave me what to do. First, let's be honest. This is exhausting because when your system is that alert, you are not just in a relationship, you are in a constant emotional surveillance. A slight tone has changed, a delayed message, a little distance, a little space, and immediately the mind says something is wrong. They are pulling away. You need to do something. What to do, you ask me now? Not believe yourself more, not ignore your feelings, and of course, not become cold. What you need is to recognize that your mind is not reacting only to the present, it is reacting to the possibility of loss. Your first step: stop treating every change as danger. Just because You sense something does not mean abandonment is happening, right? Not everything you think is true. Your sensitivity may be real, but your interpretations may still be fear based. Ask yourself, what are you really afraid of? Am I seeing what is happening here or what I fear would happen? Differentiate the both. Because anxious attachment does not heal by more reassurance. That is a loop. If you depend on their reassurance, then you will always be dependent on them. You can only break this loop by inner safety. It will not happen overnight, but slowly. Through self trust, through emotional regulation, through not making the other person your oxygen. Cool. Let's move on to the next question. How to heal anxious attachment issues, suffering in relationships. I love these how to questions as if there is one right answer which is going to fix all of it. First of all, again, you do not heal anxious attachment by finding a partner who never triggers you. You heal it by understanding what relationships have come to mean inside you. What do they mean inside you? For many people, relationship do not just mean love. It means, like we discussed, it means safety, self-worth, proof that they are desirable, fear of being left, fear of not being enough. So that love is not only love for you. That relationship is not only a relationship for you. That is why the attachment becomes anxious because too much is being carried by that connection. So you need to stop making love responsible for all the wounds it did not create. Psychology would say that I am seeking another person to regulate what I have not learned to hold within myself. Spiritually, the self is already whole. The panic belongs to the ego that feels incomplete. When those two understandings starts meeting, healing is possible. But if you were looking for step by step guidance, I don't know you and I don't give any generic advice. So if you want to come to me for how to, you better book a clarity call. I need to know you because what works for one person will not work for another person. If people can have different meanings for relationship, and that's why I don't like psychology because it tries to fit people in a box. Now, all of you anxious attachment people, you get fixed like this. So, yeah, I hope you got some clarity. Let me move on to the next question. How do I balance giving a lot of love in a relationship without coming across as needy or losing my own identity? I think we kind of covered this question previously as well, but this is such an important question. So I would want to add some more here. Because many people think problem is loving too much. I love too much. It is not a problem. What is the real issue here? You are giving love from the fear of not being enough. And fear always overgives. It gives too much, too fast, too often. And this is not because your heart is overflowing, because ego is trying to secure this connection. That is why it starts feeling needy. Your love is not wrong, but the giving is carrying anxiety. So, for you, give love because it is natural to you, not because you are trying to create a result. Give because you want to express, not because you are trying to avoid being left. That one change will make your love so much clean. And the second part of your question matters too. How do you not lose your identity? By staying in contact with yourself while loving. Keep asking, what do I feel? What do I need? What am I not saying? What am I tolerating because I'm afraid? Love should not require self erasure. If your love only survives when you become smaller, that is not balance. That is fear. And if you noticed, almost every question comes back to the same root. Not the love itself, but what love touches inside us: abandonment, self worth, identity, fear, control, or memory, or whatnot. Love does not naturally create fear, or it does not become fear. That is the deepest truth of this episode. Fear enters love when love gets mixed with attachment, with identity, with memory, with insecurity, with the need to secure what cannot be secured. And once that happens, you stop experiencing the relationship as it is. You start experiencing it through your old wounds, old projections, the fear of not being enough, fear of loss, fear of choosing wrong, fear of losing yourself. So, the work for you is not to become less loving, but become less afraid. So, you can't become less afraid not by controlling more, not by needing less overnight, not by pretending that you don't care, but first see it clearly. See where attachment is. See where identity is getting tied to this connection. See where fear starts making love heavy. Seeing where overthinking begins to replace presence. Because once you see that clearly, you stop blaming love for what fear is doing, right? You stop calling anxiety deep love. You stop calling obsession connection. And you stop calling self loss commitment. And you stop calling fear intuition. And slowly, love becomes lighter again because you stop making it carry the burden of your unfinished inner world. That is maturity. That is spiritual growth. And that is where Vedanta helps us so deeply, that the self is already whole. It does not need to possess, it does not need to cling, it does not panic at every change, it does not beg to be chosen. That is all ego. And the more you know the difference, the freer your love becomes. After listening to this episode, do not rush to fix your relationship, but start observing at least. Watch what happens in you when you care deeply. Watch when the fear enters, where you are needing anything, where you begin to abandon yourself. That watching, observing is already healing, right? Do share this episode with somebody who needs to hear this. And thank you so much for listening this far. This is Detachment Circle. My name is Siddharth Das, your guide in this journey to self realization. Until next time, stay aware, stay free, and stay true to yourself. Goodbye.